Hello friends, this is Durga from IT University. So, hello friends, this is Durga from IT University. As you guys know, this is backup for my WebEx audience, but still you can watch these videos from YouTube, and you can keep on practicing on whatever technologies I'm teaching. That being said, let me go to the agenda quickly. So we are in the middle of creating objects. I hope people on WebEx can see my screen and also can listen to me. Just confirm. Can you guys listen to me? Yeah. So we are in the middle of exploring objects. So as part of this, let us try to create object which will invoke the NCR function. NCR is combination, and the formula for NCR is n factorial divided by r factorial into n minus r factorial. Okay, so this is the formula: factorial of n divided by, it's all in brackets, factorial of n minus r multiplied by factorial of r. Or you can also say factorial of n divided by factorial of n minus r divided by factorial of r. Both mean same. Okay, so we will develop a function for that, and as part of our main function, we will actually invoke that, and also we will see how to pass program arguments to this object. Okay, so I hope you guys have created hello world program yesterday. Now we will create a new one here. New Scala class. It is of type object, and combination is the name for it. Okay, ideally all these class names and object names have to be in capital. That is the best practice, not a rule. But for now, I'm just using all small. But you, eventually, you should learn best practices, and you have to use this. And I will explain the relevance of those best practices, why the class names and objects names should be capitals and all, a bit later. Okay, so again, as I have explained earlier, or yesterday's session, you can define main function starting with def main, and you take array of string as parameter. Parameter name is args, data type is array of string. Okay, and then you can just give the brackets, it will automatically fill. It is IntelliJ is smart enough to define the return type. That being said, we start with hello world. Now I want to create a function which will compute the combination, and it takes two parameters. So first, let us develop a function. The function can be part of the object, it can be outside the object. There is no mandatory requirement that it has to be part of the object, like in Java. In Java, every method has to be part of a class, whereas here it is not the case. So let's try creating a function outside the object. And the function name I want to give is comb, and it takes two parameters, n of type integer and then r of type integer, and return type is integer itself. It is not mandatory to define the return type. As long as we return integer as the final statement, the comb function will return integer. Okay, and what we want to return, we want to compute factorial of n, factorial of n minus r, and also factorial of r, and then use those things to get NCR. So as factorial itself can be a function for better modularity, I am defining a new function called fact, which will compute the factorial. Okay, it takes only one parameter. Let us name it as I, and then data type is integer, and then equal to. You have to specify equal to. If you don't specify equal to, it will assume that you are trying to return unit. Okay, so you have to specify equal, then only it will assume that you are returning something, and based upon whatever you are returning, it will infer the data type of the return value of the function. Okay, so here either you can use recursion or regular. It's up to you. I'm using regular function, regular implementation. You can also do recursion if you go back to my earlier examples. Okay, so how the logic will work? So you have to start with I, decrement by 1, and then multiply into a result, and you have to return the result. So first I'm creating a result variable where result equal to 0, and then I can define for loop. Okay, element I to 1, or you can say 1 to I also, it's up to you, by -1. Okay, and then result equal to result into element. It has to be 1 here, not 0. 0 multiplied by anything will be 0, so eventually we'll get only 0. Okay, to avoid that, we have to set result to 1. Okay, and then return result. Okay, now we have completed factorial function, and we have to use this function as part of higher level function called comb. Okay, and here I just have to return factorial of n divided by factorial of n minus r, sorry, multiplied by factorial of r. That is the formula for a combination. So that's how you can pass. Now you can invoke the function comb to get the combination for 2 integers from your main function. Okay, so first I will hard code. So here I will just say comb of 4 comma 2. What is the value of 4 comma 2? It will be 4 factorial divided by 2 factorial into 2 factorial, means again divided by 2 factorial, which means 12 by 2, which means 6. It has to return 6. So the combination function has to return 6 in this case. Okay, so you can actually print ln here. There is this question. I will answer that question once I complete this. Run combination. Okay, I think if you define it as object, this has to be part of object itself. So it was my bad, I guess. Let me try placing it. Here. Now let me try. Yeah. So the value is incorrect. So okay, this is the reason. I put res into equal to and then res into element. That's why it has given incorrect value. Now you got 6. Okay. Now, if you want to pass these as arguments to your program, what you have to do is, if you are using IntelliJ, even Eclipse, it is almost same. You have to go to run, okay, and click on edit configurations. Okay, sometimes it will pick the main class whichever is selected here, but in some cases it might not be selected. If it is not selected, then you have to click on plus, choose application, give the main class name here. First give the name to that, then give the main class name here. Then you have to pass program arguments, and you have to choose class path of module. You sometimes you also might have to choose JRE, and then you have to click OK. In this case, I don't want to create a new one, so I just clicked on cancel, and I'm going back to run edit configurations. Okay, it chose my class. Make sure it chose your class along with fully qualified package name. Once we explore package, it's very important to understand how you can how the classes should be represented with the fully qualified fully qualified name. So it has to be prefixed with the hierarchy of your packages. Because there will be same programs with the same names or files with same names in multiple packages, you need to make sure you are choosing right one. Don't worry too much about it. We will cover later as well. Now, as part of the program arguments, I want to pass 4 and 2 as 2 values. So here, even though these are numeric values, okay, as main function enforces us to accept as string, the arguments will be passed as string only. Okay, so we need to typecast and then pass to our function. It could be explicit, it could be implicit. Let us try implicit typecasting. Then we will actually see explicit typecasting. I will answer that question. Just give me a moment. Let me finish what I'm talking about. I will come back to that question. Okay. So now I have to pass those arguments. So those whatever we have specified in edit configurations under program arguments, okay, those will be passed to args variable here, and it is of type array. What is array? Don't worry too much about it. For now, just remember it as a syntax. You need to understand the logic behind it. But when you talk about collections, you will understand. It will be it will be quite it will be a natural flow for you, and you will be able to understand. Few people might not be able to understand what is that at this time. Don't worry about it. Okay. So let's try passing how you can access array. So the first element of the array can be read using like this. Okay. And the Scala of Java, even Java, is smart enough to understand the space as delimiter and convert it into an array of string internally. You don't need to worry about it. You just give space as delimiter between between the arguments, and it will create array for you, and then it will invoke the function. Okay, so args of 0 will be the first element, which is 4, and args of 1 will be the second element. Now, if you see, there is a red line throwing compile time error saying cannot resolve reference comp with such signature. The reason is comp is created with 2 arguments of type integer, and we are actually passing 2 strings as values. Okay, for that reason, we have to typecast. So typically in Java, typecasting will be done like this. Okay, whereas in Scala, you cannot do like that. Rather, you have to use toInt to cast it to integer. So for both, we have to define toInt. So yesterday, Gopi was asking about casting. So it is different between Java and Scala. Scala, it is more a functional approach, whereas Java, it is different. You have to put appropriate data type in front of it, or there are functions also. You can use functions as well, but there is an alternative way as well in Java. But I don't think Scala has that alternative way. You have to typecast like this. That's the only difference. Otherwise, everything is same. Okay. Now you can save it. Already arguments are passed as part of the program arguments in run edit configurations. Okay. Make sure you click on OK, apply OK, and then click on run, and you got the fix. Okay. You can also move these lines to up, saying val n equal to args of 0 dot toInt, and val r equal to args of 1 dot toInt to make it a little bit readable. Okay, some of the programming best practices suggest you to use like this. Okay, you can also run this program, and you can see the result. Okay, so now let me take few questions. So the first question is, but due to that, function can be declared outside of our class or object. No, it was wrong. It was my incorrect assumption. You cannot, if you are using object, you have to put your functions as part of the object itself. Okay, in REPL also, even though you are creating functions outside a class, outside the scope of the class, internally it will create a implicit class, and it will throw these functions into that. It will build a wrapper on top of it, and using that wrapper it will generate the bytecode so that the program can be executable. So it was my wrong assumption earlier. Then Amarnath is asking, why do we have nested functions like this? Can't we write fact outside comb? Can't we call the function fact from function comb? You can do that. There is no harm. But if you want to keep this immune to changes for other purposes, if you want to keep it private, if you are familiar with software engineering principle, there is something called cohesion and coupling. Okay, so you need to make sure whether whether you have to apply those software engineering principles depending upon the behavior of whatever you are trying to do. And if you want to keep your functions immune to changes for other purposes, you can define a nested function like this, and you will not be able to call anywhere outside comb. Okay, so that's the only reason why we are doing this. If you want, you can keep it outside also. There is no harm. So Pramod is asking, did we create array to assign value to args and args1? It's a good question. I will go back to edit configurations and show you what I have passed. I have passed 4 space 2 as argument to the program. So the Scala compiler and the Java runtime environment have the necessary logic to convert this space delimited string into an array implicitly. So when the main function is invoked, irrespective of the number of values you passed with the space as delimiter, they will be converted into array. You will not be passing an array. Okay, it is the compiler responsibility or the runtime responsibility to convert that string into an array. So how to do debug? How to debug the program step by step? Very good question. I haven't explored yet that aspect. So I will be deferring it for now. But it's a very good question. If you want, you can actually explore it, and you can come up with a blog post, and I will be posting on my website, and I will be using it for reference in future. It's a very good question, and you should know how to debug the program. Okay. If any of you want to contribute, you guys can contribute. Any other questions on this? Okay, Somalia is asking what will happen if we paste in REPL. Very good question again. So here, let me show you first with the typical Scala, and then I will cover SBT also little bit. Okay, we can copy this entire code and go to paste mode. Yes, object is a singleton class. You will see the details from of Java representation of these things later. Once I cover classes and all, I will get into the details about how internally the compiler will manage these things. Can we pass the argument in a way passed by reference? Yeah, there is call by value and call by reference concept in Scala. We will see those things in action later. Don't worry too much about it at this time. Okay, let me save this. Now the object is created. Okay, when I paste the entire stuff, and when I hit the Control D, the object is created. Okay, now if you want to invoke the main function, you will not be able to invoke the way we have done as part of IntelliJ. What you have to do is you have to say combination dot main. Okay, and then you have to say array of 4, 2. This is how you have to invoke from repl, from typical repl. Okay, I hope this is clear, Somalia. Now the combination object is accessible, but you cannot run the same way as we have done in IntelliJ. And this is not the appropriate way to run the main function. There is an alternative way which can be done using SBT. That's where SBT comes into picture. Also, you can directly, as the programs are compiled, you have classes, and you can use Scala command to execute those things. But the more appropriate way is to use SBT. Okay, and the way you have to use SBT is, first thing you have to do, what you have to do is go here, right click on this, copy path, and then cd paste, go to that path, make sure you have build.sbt in that location. Okay, and then you say sbt package. Okay, before running this, let us see what we have under target classes. So you see, for whatever code we have generated, it has created multiple classes. Don't worry too much if you don't understand these things. One more thing which you need to understand is, if you go back one directory up, and if you run the find command on that, there is no jar file here. Okay, so the way you should run the program is using jar. That's the way you will deploy as an application on your application server, or even on the Spark cluster if it is a Spark based application. So you need to build the jar. How you can build the jar? One way is SBT package. You have to be in the base directory of your application where you have build.sbt, etc., and then run sbt package. Okay, now the jar file is compiled, and if I run find command on this, there is the additional file, which is this one. So we have to use this and pass it to SBT. No, and you don't need to pass. You just have to say SBT run. And if there is only one main function, it will go to that main function and it will try to execute. But as this is taking parameters, what you have to do is you have to put it in bracket, give the class name, which is 1 minute. Yeah, give the no, I think you just have to do like this. Let me run like this and see if it works. Okay, so there are two functions, hence it is asking to hit the number, but the parameters are not taken. So here I have to say SBT run. Let me see SBT. Let me get into SBT and let me check the help. Okay, and then help run, passing along arguments. Okay, it does not give the syntax. So run, I think main combination force 2. This is where, no, this is not the way. Run combination. This is not the way. Let me check. SBT run main class arguments. Okay. Okay, just have to say run combination 4-2. This is not the way. Yeah, this is the perfect example. Yeah. So I have to use run main. Okay, so I have to exit here. SBT run main combination, and it takes 2 parameters. So now you can see 6. Okay, so you will be deploying the jar file and invoking the main function like this in the higher environment. Okay, and you have to integrate with the appropriate framework. It's not that you will be running SBT like this directly. Yeah, she already mentioned about it. Thank you. So Balmodli is saying SBT is similar to Maven, right? So do we have command like Maven build, Maven clean, Maven install? Yes, we have bunch of commands. If you go to SBT and hit enter, and type help, you will see bunch of commands here. Okay, SBT package is for compiling it into jar file like Maven build. And then I'm not sure about Gradle, Venkat. I haven't explored yet, so I don't know. I don't know answer for that question. Praveen is saying he is not able to see the video. I think you have to, you might have to rejoin. I think everyone else can see my screen. I think you have to rejoin. Okay, so there is a package command to build. Why it is not showing package here? About task settings, reload, projects, project, set, session, inspect, plugins, last. Yeah, it is not listing all the commands for some reason. But if I say help package, yeah, it is. I think there are some issues with respect to SBT here. It is not actually showing the entire information. So if you do the package, it will produce the main artifact. Run is to run the programs in the package. Run main is also an option. And then I think there is clean. Let me see, help clean, which will delete the jar file, and you have to recompile it. And there is a compile also. It compiles the sources. It will only keep on generating the classes. Okay, it will not build the jar file. If you say SBT compile, it will only compile the classes. To build the jar, you have to use package. But there is a unique feature, which is SBT tilde compile. If you say SBT tilde compile, it will compile all the existing programs and it will hang. It will not return SBT console to you. Okay. But whenever you change something, let's say I want to print something here, println, and say I am in combination program, and save it. And whatever files that are changed will be recompiled automatically, and then it is waiting for source changes. Okay, so that is tilde compile. I think we also have tilde run rather than just compile. Let me see if it is there. So what tilde run will do is, if you have only one main function, it will automatically pick that function and it will start throwing the output of that function. Okay, here we have two, that's why it is asking what we want to choose. And if you choose one of those things, and if you keep on making changes to your application, someone is not on mute. Let me see. Hello, someone is not on mute, and I'm not able to put them on mute. It was Praveen. Hello, Praveen, can you go on to mute? So WebEx started throwing tantrums here. So it is not, I'm not able to mute him. Hey, Praveen, can you go on to mute? Yeah, I think it is better now. Yeah, that's what, Pramod, it's actually throwing some tantrums. It is not letting me to do that. I think WebEx have some issues. So sometimes it chokes. Anyway, it seems he is on mute, so let's move on. Otherwise, if there's a background noise, we can expel him and he has to rejoin. Probably that could resolve the issue. Okay. So this is how you can keep on running your programs, recompile and run whenever there are changes. If you use tilde, tilde is a special character. I think you can also do sbt tilde package. I haven't tried it, but you can give it a try and see if it works. Okay. Most importantly, there is a command called sbt console. Okay, let me expel him. This time it is Anish, not Praveen. Anish, can you go on to mute? Hello, Anish, can you? Yeah, thank you, Anish. Okay. So now we are talking about SBT console, a very, very, very important command which you need to understand, and I will be using it quite a lot. So what SBT console will do is, whatever classes you have as part of your project, all those things will be accessible through the Scala repl which is created here. So you don't need to go to if you just use Scala like this, and if you want to validate your program, what you have to do, you have to copy this thing, go to the paste mode, and then it will create an object, and then you can test it the way I have done earlier. But if I actually run SBT console, the classes and objects will be accessible to you. Not only that, if you have third-party dependencies, which we will see later, those things also will be available to you. You can actually keep developing complete programs through this, through SBT console. But it is a little bit tedious compared to IDE. We'll use IDE only to develop the program. But to explore the code, depending upon the dependencies which you are using, and also the code you have already developed to validate simple code snippets, SBT console is the most important command. Okay. Now, even without creating the object, I will have access to combination. It is supposed to autofill. Let me try. Okay, for some reason, did I create in a package? No, I didn't create in a package. So let me see, HW main array. I will come back to the questions in a moment. I think I'm in the wrong directory. I'm in the right directory. And it is supposed to access. Let me try once again. Okay, let me see if it is part of any package. It is not part of any package. Interesting. It is supposed to access directly, and I have tried many times in the past. Probably this could be the reason. Let me delete this one. And quit once again, and then launch it again. Okay, combination. No, it is not working. So I will come back to this later, but we'll be using this quite a lot. So don't worry too much about it. You will understand. And SBT console is one of the most important command. Okay. So that being said, there are a few questions. So Piyush is saying, I can see the build.sbt, but when I execute sbt or sbt run, it says sbt is not recognized as internal or external command, operable program or batch file. That means you haven't set up sbt on your laptop. Okay. So what you are supposed to do is, Piyush, what operating system you are using? Are you using Windows or Mac? Hello, Piyush. Which operating system you are using? Is that Windows or Mac or any Ubuntu or CentOS? Windows. Okay. That means your SBT is not set up completely. So what you have to do is go back to this course, go to getting started, go to setup development environment, and as part of it, after Scala IDE, there is there are instructions for SBT also. Install SBT and create sample SBT project. Okay. If it is Eclipse, these are the instructions. Otherwise, you can easily follow the video and you will be able to take care of it. And also there is overview of SBT here. Okay, so you haven't set up SBT. No, you don't need to set up any environment variable unless you download the jar file. What you are supposed to do is SBT download. If you search for SBT download, it will go to this Scala SBT. Okay, as mine is Windows, a Mac, it is showing Mac instructions to use brew install or port install, and it will install SBT on the Mac. For all the platforms, there is a zip file. People tend to do that. Don't use it. If you are using Windows, if you go to the documentation, if you go to the download, for Windows, automatically it will choose the appropriate. Yeah, that's what. There will be MSI. You will see MSI here. You just have to download and double click and install, and your environment variables and everything will be set internally. You don't need to set explicitly like this, and you are good to go. So Amog is asking, for IntelliJ we don't need SBT, right? It comes by default. So the Scala and SBT which I am using from command prompt is different from whatever I am using in IntelliJ. I have Scala and SBT outside IntelliJ as well. Okay, there should be a way to integrate those things also, but I keep it separate. I prefer to keep them separate. If you want to use whatever comes with IntelliJ, you need to identify the appropriate location where IntelliJ stores SBT. And as Suman mentioned, you have to set the environment variable, and also you have to add the bin directory to path. Only then it will work. If you, yeah, Sri, but even if it comes with the tool, it will be accessible only from IntelliJ by default. If you have to access outside, you have to set up SBT separately also. And I will recommend you to set up separately. Okay. rather than using the one from IntelliJ. So that being said, if you have issues, um, we will see later, probably towards the end of the session. But you have to first attempt setting up SBT yourself. Then only I will be able to answer. So we can see even in the next class. So Dheeraj is asking if we do coding on Eclipse and compile with SBT. You can do that. Even for that, you have to um, uh, even for using sorry, if you want to use Eclipse, there is a tedious process. It is not as straightforward as IntelliJ. For that also I have instructions, but it's in a separate blog post or something. Let me search for it. Okay. Let me see. Okay, I think it is in a different course altogether. That course is partially complete. So don't follow that course completely except for the instructions to set up on Windows. Except for the instructions to set up Eclipse. So the course name is Big Data Engineer Immersion. And in that, as part of the setting up development environment, not this one. I will give you the exact link. You don't need to search for it. So you have to follow this one, set up Scala IDE for Eclipse. Okay, and this will cover step-by-step instructions to set up Scala IDE for Eclipse. If you, but it is not as straightforward as IntelliJ, and you have to set up something called SBT Eclipse plugin, and then only you will be able to integrate Eclipse and SBT. There is no out-of-the-box support from Eclipse to use SBT directly. It is a little bit tedious, not only to set up, but also to create the projects. Once you create the project, it will be straightforward. Okay, so now let's move on to the next topic. Let me see if I miss anything with respect to objects. So by default, all the functions and the variables in object are static. Okay. So we cannot pass arguments to objects. Yeah, so when we actually create the object like this, you cannot define something like this. And for objects, there is no concept of creating the arguments. There is no concept of constructor, etc. Because if you can create constructor, that means you can instantiate objects. With object, it itself is a singleton class, and it has to be loaded only once as part of the application lifecycle, and hence there is no concept of constructors and all. So there is no support for arguments for object, but for classes you can do that. So that being said, now let's get on to the classes. So unlike Java, it takes very few lines of code to create classes along with boilerplate code. Okay. So again, here I will be using repl. Okay. And if you want to create a class in Java, first you have to create a program with the same name as class, and then you have to define the class name, and then it has to have a constructor. There could be default constructor also, and then you need to have additional methods, member variables, etc. So it's quite cumbersome process to create class. It will take several lines of code. Whereas in Scala, if you want to create a class, You just have to say class and give the class name as department. We will understand why I'm using these names a little bit later. And let's say it has two variables, department, it has two members, department ID and department name. Okay, so department ID is typically of type int, department name is of type string. That's it. You don't need to do anything else. Now you will get a constructor internally. You might or might not get getter and setter methods. I will explain you when you will get those things and when you will not get. By default, Scala will create POJO type of stuff, plain old Java object type of stuff, which is nothing but a bean kind of stuff, depending upon how you are passing the arguments to the class. Okay, so here if you don't specify val or var, and don't think this as a function. So when it comes to function, right, yesterday when we actually developed the function called sum, we passed the arguments, or even today with factorial, we passed an argument, let's say I and int. This is an argument, this is not a variable. Hence, we cannot have val or var before it. It will not work, it will complain. Okay, and now we are creating a class. So there is a difference between what we have done earlier and what we are trying to do now. And for a class, when you define it as a class, you can pass arguments. So argument means if it doesn't have val or var, they are arguments. Or you can also pass variables. Okay, so if you don't specify val or var in class, they are arguments, and those arguments are primarily for constructor, which will be created internally. How to get the details of that? There is a Java P command, which is Scala command, which takes a control argument called -P or small p, I do not remember exactly, and you can give the class name. Okay, Java home is not correct, so it's because we are coming to SBT. Let me use Scala and let me create the class. And now let me run this command. You see, when these two things are passed as arguments, not as variables, you only got a constructor. So these will be converted into constructor arguments, and you can see the data type only. You don't see the names of the variables. The data type of first one is Java primitive int, and the data type of second one is second argument is Java string class. So internally, it is actually converting into bytecode, and this is the metadata of that bytecode. Okay, so this is how it will work. Even for object, you can get the information. We will see a little bit later. Don't worry about how to get the information for object. We will see later. Okay. Now, if you want to create member variables, so if you just pass arguments like this, then there will be no member variables for that class. Only constructor arguments, and you can create object, but you will not be able to access these two things. For example, now if I have to create a object of type department, I have to use val or var for that. Let me name it as D. I have to say department 1 HR. I know it is the department which you typically don't like, especially in India. Okay, so this is now we have the object D of type department, which take two arguments. Now, if I want to get the department ID, if I say department ID, it says it's not member of department. So these are not member variables. These are just constructor arguments. Okay. Now, if you want to create member variables, you have to define each of these parameters as val or var. If it is val, they are immutable member variables. If it is var, they are mutable. Okay. Now, if you look at the metadata, this is very important to understand. See, you keep on observing the differences. That will make a lot of sense. If you ignore and if you don't follow, you will lose the momentum and you will not be able to understand what I will be covering at a later point in time. Okay, that's why I'm getting into internals and I'm trying to explain. So now I have passed two variables to department while creating the class rather than just arguments. Because I created them as variables which are immutable, you can see the department ID as well as department name data types does not change, and both of them are private final. And this is from Java perspective. If you are not a Java developer, don't worry too much about these things, which means that once you set these two things, you cannot manipulate anymore. Okay, but Java developers will get it much faster compared to others. And on top of it, you have two methods: public int department ID, public Java lang string department name. So these are getter methods. Okay, which means we can use these things to get the information of these fields. Okay, so once we create the object, if I want to get the department ID, I can say d.department ID and I will be able to get it. So getter methods that will be generated by Scala programs will not have get before that. The getter method will have the same name as the variable itself. Okay, and then finally you have the constructor similar to the previous one. So there was a question, I will come back to that. Let me finish this real quick. So now, yes, always there will be a non-default constructor. Scala will provide some functionality to it. Now, if I try to create the object, okay, and if I want to access them, I can access them saying d.department ID, which will give the ID, and name, which will give the name. So what it is doing is you are not actually accessing them directly because they are private. You will not be able to access. But internally, it is actually invoking this getter method. Okay. As circular braces are optional in Scala, you don't need to use circular braces here. But even if you, I think you cannot use in this case. Not enough arguments for method apply. I don't know why it is complaining. I am not 100% sure, but you are able to see this primarily because of the getter method. Okay, and then there are a few questions. Let me take those questions. I will repeat, Venkat. Let me go one after the other. Bala Murali is asking why the string is getting defined as Java string, even though Scala has string data type. So here you need to understand Scala is compiling into Java bytecode. Okay, and it, even though you say string, which might be from Scala package, internally when it compiles, it actually use Java features as well. It all depends upon the constructor's intelligence. They choose whatever should be used from Java, and they provide additional functionality for those things, whatever they think is not efficient in Java. So here string is pretty much standard in Java. So they tend to use Java string itself internally. Even though you define Scala string, if you reverse engineer and look at the code, they will be using Java string extensively as part of the logic. And you will see this many times. So Suman, the default constructor will be whatever you are passing. So earlier when I pass two arguments, that will be the default constructor. So you have to pass two arguments all the time to satisfy the specification of it. So department take to create a department object, you have to pass two variables or two arguments. Then only department object will be created, and it will be created using the default constructor, which is generated as part of creating the class. So Venkat, listen to me here. So the major difference from the syntax perspective between this one and the next one is the val. Okay. So if you do not specify val, okay, it will behave as if we are passing arguments to a function, which is constructor in this case. So as arguments does not have mutable or immutable state, okay, it will not create a member variables as part of the class that will be generated after compiling. It will only create a constructor with the two arguments which are passed here. Okay, because of that, you will be able to create the object, but you will not be able to access anything from it because there are no member variables created. And then, as part of the second attempt, I have created created class with two parameters, but they are of type immutable variables. As I am saying, use these immutable variables to generate your bytecode. It is actually creating two member variables, and then it is actually creating constructor. To access those two member variables, it is also generating getter methods like this. If you want to have both getter and setter methods, I'm going there. You just have to say var here. And if you look at the metadata, you see it has private int and private Java lang string. It is not final. They are not final because we are saying that these two member variables of the class are mutable. Okay. And on top of getter methods, we also have setter methods. And the setter methods are department ID underscore double equal. So double equal, as it is special character, they are doing like this. So now let me create a object b equal to department 1 comma HR. Okay, as we can modify those things, you can say department ID equal to 2. And now if you say department ID, it will actually get the value. So internally it will be invoking the setter method, which is represented like this. You can also invoke that by saying d dot department ID underscore equal 3. I don't know why it is complaining. I think we cannot. I think I'm missing something here. Okay, even the internally it invoke something like this. I'm not able to invoke them explicitly. So we have to say underscore equal equal because here you see dollar equal. Probably it could be underscore this. Yeah, so that is the reason why it is underscore single equal. And now if I say d dot department ID, I'll get the updated value. Yeah, it's not double equal, it's single equal. Double equal is for comparison, single equal is for assignment. Okay, so this $EQ, let me get the metadata once again. This $EQ is actually this one. Okay. So I hope your questions are answered, Venkat. So let me take the Bala's follow-up question. When you define the department class as val, which means that it is immutable variables, how are we able to change the values using the object of the class? Or you cannot change. That's the whole purpose of defining them as immutable. Okay. Even if you look at the code that is generated, both the variables are defined as final, which means even in Java, if you define member arguments as final, even if you have setter methods, you will not be able to use them. So Haripriya, you are jumping ahead. We will see that later. Don't worry too much about that. There's a whole bunch of content on that, and I'll be spending at least 2 classes just on collections, and you will be understanding without any questions on it. And I'll be emphasizing on collections a lot until you understand, because collections are the if you know collections, Spark will be a cakewalk for you. If you don't understand collections, it will be a nightmare for you. So I will definitely make sure that you understand collections. It is fine even if you don't understand the classes, all these things, but you should understand collections at least up to 80%. Okay, so that is about how to create the classes and how to get the metadata, etc. Okay, I hope things are clear. Now let us move on. Yeah, one thing is this is all typical programming. If you want, you can override the behavior of getters and setter methods, which is generated, but it is not very straightforward. You need to work around it. Typically, they don't want you to override the default boilerplate code which will be generated internally when Scala compile these classes. But there is a workaround for that, which is a little bit tedious. You will hardly do that through the course, so I am actually differing it. If you are interested, you can search for overriding the default getter and setter methods in Scala, and you will get the instructions for it. Okay, and then as part of this, now let us see a little bit more details. Okay, so typically the first and foremost thing which I want to explain to you in classes is, if I say print of D in this case, what I'm getting some metadata of the object. I'm not getting actual results. Okay, so if you want to get actual results, what you have to do, if you are familiar with Java, the base class of Java have a method called tostring, and you have to override that tostring to get appropriate information from your class. Even in Scala, there is a class hierarchy. The class hierarchy starts with any, and then you have something called any val. I have used a term called value classes when I talk about the primitive data types earlier. So, and I mentioned that there is no distinction between primitives and the classes like in Java for primitives. But even then, when it actually executes the program, internally it will process as primitives wherever it has to be processed as primitives. It will use the Java the actual classes such as integer, int, float, etc., or integer, float, etc. from Java, wherever the data has to be processed like classes and using the class functions. I have explained that quite in detail. So this is why they are called as value classes, because if you see the hierarchy, the picture is pretty small. So let me open in a new tab, and let me zoom in now. It is a bit blurred, but I think I can convey the message. So here you can see the immediate child classes for any is any val and any ref. Okay, so any ref are all Java lang object classes. So object is the main class for Java, as per my understanding. So all the any ref classes are like child classes for object. So even above object, they have created a base class called any within Scala. Okay, again internally in Java, they haven't made any changes to JVM or JRE. It is all Scala compiler which sees these differences. When it comes to runtime, it is same. There is only object and its child classes. Whereas in Scala, for compiler purpose, they have created a higher level Scala any and another subclass called any val. If you are not Java developer, you will not understand these things. That's fine, no issues. So this is why the primitives are called as value classes, because they extend any val as part of the compiler. Okay, and then any ref is kind of alias to object, and all the classes are child classes for it. Okay, so as you guys know, object have two string, and whenever you create a class, it will by default extend any ref. Okay, or any ref or Scala object, and I think any ref, it will extend any ref, and there will be you will be able to override toString. So you have to override toString to get more appropriate information for your class. So here, instead of using Scala repl, I will be using the IDE itself. I am creating a new package here and give the package name as retail. Don't give any fancy names. Just give it as retail. Okay, and then I want to create a Scala object as part of it. So right click on the package. Don't right click on the Scala folder. This is called source main Scala is called as source folder. So don't click on the source folder. Right click on the package. Give the name to it. Let us name it as department, or you can also give one generic name called retail. Okay, and we will try to use the same thing for everything. And let's make it as an object. Click OK. Okay, and in this we'll be creating class first. So let me copy paste whatever I have created. Okay, I'll be creating a class with immutable variables. There is a question from Gopi, and also there is a question from Balamurli. Before I go to it, let me answer those questions. In any val, there is no Scala.string class. Any reason for that? Yeah, string is not a primitive. String, even in Java, string is not primitive. There is no a small string. There is char, but not string. String is not a primitive type. For that reason, it is not a value class. Gopi is asking, can we overload constructors and can we create the methods using the object created in repl? Yes, you can do that. As I have mentioned to you, whatever boiler code it is generating, if you want to override the behavior of the default constructor, it is not very straightforward. Okay, but there is a way to do that, and you have to know about it. Oh, I'm sorry, it was a wrong statement. I'll get to you in a moment. Constructors is a special, and you should override, and we will see how to override in a moment. Okay, so instead of using just the boilerplate code, if you want to provide functionality for the constructor, what you have to do is you have to open curly braces like this, and then whatever code you write here will become part of the constructor that will be created as part of the boilerplate code. Okay, so for now, let us print ln and department ID is plus department ID, and then column, and then plus. I'm just printing department ID and department name as part of the constructor. Or let me say, and department name is department name. Okay, so this will be the behavior of your constructor. You have overridden the behavior of the constructor, and now I can say val d equal to department 1 comma IT. We have to say new because we have to instantiate the object. Okay, and save it. And okay, we have to define the main function. So to make it executable, so I am creating main function here, args array of string, and then I am copy pasting this to here. Okay, now if you compile this, it is not doing anything because we are not, even if you do print ln d, it will still okay. So yeah, now I ran it. When I save, it will not run automatically. If it is a worksheet, it will run, but as it is not worksheet, it will not run immediately. So when I run this program, as part of creating the object, it has invoked the constructor and it printed this line. But this println is actually printing reference to the object, not the contents of the object. Okay, so there is a question here. Let me take it. Amog, that's what you have to refresh object-oriented concepts. I'm not going to cover all these things here. If it is tough to understand, just remember that class and function is different. Okay. If you really want to understand, you have to refresh your object-oriented concepts. Then only it will make sense to you. And to proceed further and learn Spark, you don't need to be very familiar with Scala, object-oriented concepts. You have to remember certain things, only few things, such as this thing, that class and function is different, and you can move on. Don't worry too much about this at this time. Okay. So that is my 2 cents. You have to put extra effort. All the freshers or all the folks who are joining this session, you have to put the extra effort, leveraging this summer, going through the object-oriented concepts, understanding these differences between class, interface, etc., and then it will start making sense to you. Some things will not make sense at all to you. Don't worry too much about it at this time. Just move on. Even if you could not catch up with the pace I am going with, you will get a very good overview about what these technologies are. You can, meanwhile, you can spend 1 or 2 hours every day to understand object-oriented concepts, etc. And then you can review these videos again, and it will make a lot of sense to you. Okay. So don't dig too deep. So my approach will be, even if I understand or not, I'll try to get the overview of everything by going through the entire book. Okay. And then I will identify where I will not even make notes. Okay. I will identify which lessons I understood at a higher level first, and which lessons don't make any sense. Then I will go to the lessons, and then I will go to the topics. So I will follow a flow. And I don't make notes. I don't scramble on the books. I don't do any such kind of stuff. But still, it will. I'll get it over a period of time. As part of the initial phase, yes, you will get a little bit of headache because you will not understand so many stuff. But over a period of time, you will master that art, and it will be very comfortable to you to learn any of these things. Okay. So that being said, now I want to override this thing. Again, Amog, you will not understand what is overriding means. For now, just remember that at the base class, which is Scala anyref, so whatever class we are trying to create is child for Scala anyref. Okay. So as part of the base class, there will be a tostring function. Because of the tostring function, it is actually printing the byte address of the object. Okay. So whenever you create the object, it will take some memory in your laptop and it will create that object. When something is stored in a memory, there will be an address associated with it, and that address is printed here. So this is the default behavior of the tostring function of java.lang.object, which is nothing but Scala anyref in this case. Now you extend, so whenever you create the class, even though you do not specify extends directly here, they automatically extend that Scala anyref. Because of that, you have access to tostring, and whenever you use println, the compiler or Java runtime will actually invoke the tostring method to get whatever is defined in tostring. So the default behavior is to get this. Now we are trying to override. How we can override? We have to create a function, but that function need to precede with a keyword called override. Okay, then the compiler will think that, okay, this guy is overriding a function which is inherited from the higher class than this, which could be Scala anyref, or it could be immediate parent also. So we will create a hierarchy as well. We need to create hierarchy as part of the object-oriented programming. So you can override any of the methods that is part of the immediate parent or grandparents in the hierarchy. Okay, only thing you need to remember is, if there is a method which you need to override, you have to use a keyword called override, and then rest of the stuff is same. So here I am trying to override tostring. So tostring does not take any parameter, but it returns string. Okay, so you have to satisfy that logic as part of your program. So here I just want to print department ID. I just want to return department ID, not print, but return department ID plus colon plus department name. Okay, if you define it like this, so whenever you say println of D, internally it will invoke tostring function, even though you are not calling it directly. So now you can right click on it and then run retail. You see 1:90. If you want to make it a little bit more relevant, one of the typical approach which we will see is this one. Give the class name along, then bracket. Then I want to get the department ID and comma, and then department name, and then for the bracket. This is what typically we tend to return. You will understand why I'm emphasizing on this a little bit later when we talk about collections and case classes, etc. You will understand why I am emphasizing on it. Okay, and if you say run retail, it is actually printing like this, which is better than getting the byte address. Okay, so if you have to override any function, you can do it like this. Okay, and there are a few special methods such as require. I will and require, apply, etc. I'll cover require here. Apply we will see later. Okay, what is require is if you want to do any validations on the while creating the object or before creating the object, you have to you can provide a handy function called require. So here you say require, and it require actually returns boolean, and you have to provide the functionality in the bracket itself. Let's say I want to compare whether my department, I want to check whether my department ID is positive number or not. You cannot have a department ID with negative number. So I check for department ID greater than 0. Okay, only if the department ID is greater than 0, it will let you to create the object. Otherwise, it will throw the exception. By default, it will throw some default exception. Let me try to create with 0 now, and then run. It says department ID is 0 and department name is IT because of this println statement, but it failed, saying that requirement failed, which is not a which is not providing much information to you. So to make it informational, you have to pass second parameter, a second argument to require function, which says department ID has to be positive. So you can implement certain types of validations using require function. Okay, now if you say run retail, instead of just saying requirement failed, it also passed the message department ID has to be positive. Earlier, this message is not there. Okay, that is the purpose of require function. Okay, everything is clear. Gopi is asking, does it take as null if we do not have first parameter like IT? No, it will not take. Very good question, and I am getting there. It will be covered as part of multiple constructors. Yes, there is another question, I think, from Shakti. Again, Shakti, please change it to everyone and ask the questions to everyone so that everyone will have context even if I do not repeat. So the question from Shakti is, tostring is invoked by default when you print object. Is it? That's correct. So when you so println takes a string and prints it. So there is something called implicit casting. So it will automatically whenever you use functions like println or any string functions, it will actually typecast your variable to string, and as part of the typecasting, it uses this tostring function. Okay, so that is the purpose of tostring. It's not just to print, but to wherever it has to be casted as string, it will be done automatically for you. You don't need to invoke it directly. So okay, I was asking overloading of, that's what we have to create. I'm getting into it. I will talk about multiple constructors very soon, probably today or early next week, early part of next week's class. So hold on until then. So let me go back to the material and see what all is required. We can provide the behavior for the constructor using, yeah. So again, coming back to the constructor code, now you have a println statement, you have a require function, you have override, and let's say you have another statement. End of constructor. Okay, even the first one, I just want to say begin of constructor, just to avoid confusion. Okay, now you have two println statements, and you have a require function, and you have a overridden tostring function, and you can have whatever you want as part of this. But typical code snippets like this, like println statement, and if you want to validate as part of the if condition, if you want to validate certain things outside require as part of the constructor, you can add those lines of code. You can write free flowing Scala code in this randomly with functions in between. Okay, so what it will do is it will remove it will separate the functions such as require, tostring, and other functions which will be creating, and the typical code snippets that are part of this base, and the non-function function code will be compiled as the default constructor as part of the boilerplate code. The functions will be separated out, and now if I actually go to repl and paste it over there, if I say Java P hyphen P department, now you see the tostring function here. You don't see the require, because require will be used internally. It will not be, it is not an explicit function like tostring. It is special function which will be used by Scala compiler, which will be, to generate some code as part of the default constructor. Okay, so require is a special function. It is not a regular function like tostring or any other functions which you will be writing. Other than that, other than the typical functions, everything will be part of your boilerplate code. Okay, so that's how the constructor logic will be defined, and you can mix up your free-flowing Scala code with the functions such as tostring, as we have done in this case. That is very important to understand. And all lines of code, yeah, I just explained it. Multiple constructors are defined using this keyword. So if you want to create multiple constructors, so Gopi was so particular about that thing. So if you want to create multiple constructors, again, as part of the default constructor only, to write the code, you have to use the same block. Okay, in that only you have to use this keyword to create multiple constructors. Okay, and you can have one parameter, two parameters, no parameters, more than two parameters. You can have whatever you want. Okay, so let's say every object as part of our project. So when the employee is created, when the employee joined a company, he might not have a associated department. It's a very hypothetical situation, but still an employee might not be associated with any department where he will be working. So to begin with, let's say we want to associate with him with HR department, and then afterwards we will be changing his department based upon where he will be hired. Through the induction period, let's say everyone will be part of HR department. So for that purpose, I should be able to create an object with only one parameter or one argument, which will take department ID. So I can create one argument, department ID of type integer. Okay, and that's it. And we can provide the additional functionality here. Okay, let me see. There is some syntax issue. I think I have an example here. I could not get the syntax. Yeah. This, okay, I know what the problem is. I have to use def in the beginning. That's the issue. Okay, so now it will be compiled. It shouldn't have val actually. It is compiling. Okay, so yeah, so the reason why it is complaining is, so the first line of the code has to be default constructor. Okay, it cannot be anything else. First line of code has to be default constructor. So you can say this of department ID. So we'll be wrapping up in a couple of minutes. And the second one, I just want to assign each employee to HR. So first line of code can be has to be invoking the default constructor. Okay, then you can use whatever logic you want. If you want to provide additional functionality, you can do that. Okay, so let's just println non-default constructor. Okay, now I can create object with just one argument to the constructor, and then I can say run retail. You can see it has gone through non-default constructor and it is printing 1 comma HR. Okay, so you have to invoke. You can have as many as non-default constructors, but each of them has to the first line of code in each of them has to satisfy the default constructor. Now if I paste this code to repl, and if you run java p, you can see the second constructor here. Okay, so this is how it works. So that being said, we are done with the agenda. I can take few questions, any random question with respect to big data for next 4 or 5 minutes. But if there are too many questions, I will give top priority to whatever we are covering now. Sorry, I will give least priority to whatever we are covering now, because people are leaving as we pass the time. I don't want them to miss the relevant stuff. So Gopi's question is, it always execute base constructor? Yes, it has to. It has to execute. You have to satisfy the default constructor as the first line. There is no alternative for it. Okay. So any other question? We will continue talking about this thing. We are almost done with this topic of classes, and then we will see a little bit more advanced concepts as part of the next class, where we will be talking about companion objects and case classes. Can you, Kishore is saying, can you show me path in IntelliJ how to create an object? Sure. So you just go, first create a package. So first you need to understand what source main Scala is. Source main Scala is the default source folder for your project. Okay. So all the modules has to be part of that. All the modules and packages has to be part of that. So here retail is the package which I have created. To create such kind of package, make sure you are on the lowest level directory in the source directory, which is Scala. Right click on this, go to new and select package, give the name for the package such as retail, and you will see something like this. And you should understand the differences. Okay, so if you see for the package and the Scala, the color is different, and also there is a dot in it. Okay, you have to be you have to observe all these things so that you are comfortable with these things and keep working on this without memorizing too much stuff. Okay, so this is the package. To create the object, you have to right click on the package in which you want to create the object, and then go to new, go to Scala class. In that, you can choose object and then give the name, and you will be able to create the object with boilerplate code. Even if you forget to change it to object, even if you create as class, let me say testing. By default, it will say class testing. You just, and you see here on the left side, the testing is in blue color with C in it. So if you just want to change it to object after creating the class, no need to delete it and recreate it. You just go here and change it to object. And automatically the color is changed, and also you see O in the middle, which means this is an object. And you can have as many classes. So here testing is just a name of the file. It is not the object name. You can have different name for your file and different name for the object. Okay, there is no rule that your program file name and the object or class name has to match. It can be different, like we have done in retail. Retail, we have object with the same name. Now let me change it to just T rather than. Okay, now you see this will refresh after a while. Yeah, now you see testing.scala, you have the program file name, and all the classes and objects which you'll be creating in this program file will be displayed here, and you will see that as part of the next class. So Bala is asking, can I create a F2 object also? No. So here you need to understand what singleton is. Okay, singleton, you cannot instantiate an object. That is the rule for singleton. It's a typical, so when we create a singleton class, it will look like a simple class, a typical class. But the difference between singleton class and normal class is it should not be instantiated more than once, or it should not be loaded more than once as part of the application cycle. So if you want to implement a singleton class in Java, it is a quite cumbersome process. Whereas in Scala, you just say object, it will be a singleton class, which means that you cannot instantiate. There won't be constructor. Unless you have constructor, you cannot instantiate. Because there is no constructor for object, you will not be able to create object of it. Okay, so let me delete this. So Somalia is asking here, can we implement limit? Suppose I want to see 2 entries out of 5. I do not understand the question, Somalia. You mean the constructor, or I do not get it completely. You can unmute yourself and you can ask. Again, you have to change it to everyone before you ask the question. Yeah, go ahead, Somalia. For that, you have to implement the necessary logic. We are not there yet. We have to implement necessary logic. Typically, we don't. We have to use a database, and we have to develop database code when one is passed. The get function, and if you want to get the entire, if you want to build the entire object, you have to do a database query, get the data from the database, and you have to build the object, and you have to return that. So it all depends upon how you want to use these classes and keep on adding the logic. And also we need to understand collections and all those things. And we will be doing those things a bit once we go through collections and other stuff. Okay, any other question? Okay, that being said, thank you very much. And we'll catch up tomorrow or on Monday. So Gopi is asking, don't we use this keyword for local scope as in Java? I don't think so. I'm not 100% sure, but we will see. Okay, thank you. Bye. Those who are on YouTube, thank you very much for joining the session. As I have mentioned to you earlier, I have assigned a couple of resources to answer your questions. I hope you are getting your answers, and we will keep on doing that. So keep on following the classes. And even though you are not paid students, we will try to make the learning process as smooth as possible for you. And if you really like this idea, please click on the like button of the video. If you want to provide the feedback once the video recording is, once the streaming is done, you can post your comments in the comment section of the video. And if you want to share with your friends, just click on share and share with your friends. And if you need environment to practice, just go to labs.itversity.com. From next week, we'll be starting Spark, probably towards the end of the next week. We'll be doing a lot of Spark stuff, and that requires environment for you. So if you want to follow the videos and if you want to keep on practicing, I will highly recommend you to go for labs.itverse.com or have your environment set up for that, so that the training process will be smoother. Okay, that being said, thank you very much. Bye.